Hi everyone, and welcome to this session of AfA Connect. I'm Lauren, the lead coordinator of AfA, and I will be moderating this session, which focuses on incremental change, and I'll explain shortly what this session is going to be about. But first, I have the great pleasure to introduce you to our three wonderful speakers today. We have with us Wong, Hong, and Richard Moore. So Elin is a lawyer by profession and has been volunteering with SPCA Selangor since 1996. She was the advocacy manager and farm animal welfare program manager with SPCA Selangor from 2019 to 2022, and she's now an independent contractor with Mercy for Animals Malaysia, Berhad. Hong is the chief executive and founder of Environment and Animal Society of Taiwan, or also known as EAST. He has campaigned for 20 years to change the plight of animals in Taiwan and is one of the leaders of Taiwan's animal protection movement. And Richard first came to Indonesia in 2010 to assist International Animal Rescue Indonesia with the systematic reintroductions of slow lorises rescued from the pet trade. It quickly became apparent that there was a need to understand and address the root of the problem, the illegal wildlife trade. So over the last decade, Richard has dedicated much of his time and effort to this issue. So welcome to the three of you. So I'll also briefly introduce this session and then I'll let our speakers take over. Whether you work for an animal organization or whether you're an activist, a volunteer, or someone just interested in these issues, it's sometimes difficult to perceive all of the various perspectives and the realities of all parties involved in helping animals. Some may wonder why change isn't faster, why organizations don't seem to achieve more and quicker. So this session will help us understand how organizations, governments, members of the public, facilities all have a role to play in protecting and enhancing animal welfare. Oftentimes for organizations and charities, change comes about quite slowly as organizations find themselves between various parties with different agendas and priorities. But slow change is still positive change, and there's a lot to celebrate in small day-to-day actions that eventually lead to purposeful breakthroughs. What our movement aims to achieve is to bring about long-lasting change for all animals. And with so many parties involved in politics, but also, for example, societal and systemic changes that are really desperately needed, pushes for better legislation, and the list goes on, the relentless fight that organizations pursue every day mean that these long-lasting changes can take time to come to fruition. But in the meantime, every day, organizations make small steps towards those bigger goals, and there's many small victories to celebrate on a daily basis. If you think, for example, of an animal that's been rescued or released back into the wild, their individual life has been completely turned upside down for the better. Or think of a successful awareness campaign, or when one more person decides to go vegan, for example. All of these small victories, they do matter, and they help build upon larger campaigns, such as improved legislations for animals or the end of cruel practices around the world. And when we look back 2, 5, 10, or 20 years, we can really see how much has been achieved. So today we'll address all of this, the successes, the small victories, but also the challenges and limitations we face. And I'm really excited for our speakers' presentations. We'll first hear from Hong, then from Elin, and finally from Richard. So Hong, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you very much for having me. It is my pleasure. First of all, I think my job description is quite clear that the question is we can't solve it all, but I think from the animal's point of view, they will hope that we can solve it all. So I think we have to be careful because to solve all the problem doesn't mean that we should endure in mercy fatigue, or we should be in perfectionism. And we also should be very careful about the so-called PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder. I think everyone has some kind of the disorders, more or less, or one way or another. But I think we should be distinguish this kind of the situation in everyone, but from the perspective about animal movement or certain campaigns. For example, in terms of the cage-free movement, we have to deal with the industry, we have to deal with the markets, and we also try to lobby the law or policies, and we also need to engage with the quite different community of the academics. And we need to show the evidence about the animal themselves. And we show not only the animal welfare, but also the environment. And we also need to show the society the alternatives for the cage systems. Different alternatives, whether it's a free range or bound system, because maybe different industry of different market have different choice. And we also need to keep our eyes on the development in the world. How about the global trending, about the law or the policy change or any policy issues from the international companies. And we also need to face the challenges from public or from the academics about, for example, in Taiwan, whether our land is enough to support alternative systems. What about the productivities? Is the bound system or the free range system, how about their production rate? How to solve the problem of the grounded eggs? And is the price might go up too much? And then most of the consumers cannot bear the price. Especially from the academics, usually if the animal welfare is not their core value, they don't believe the animal welfare, they might challenge us and they try to enlarge the difficulties and to minimize the positive signs. And there's also the government, the politicians or the government officials always wondering whether the alternative system might bring up the price of eggs. And the egg price, for example, in Taiwan is under control by the central government. And we also need to engage with the commerce, the company, the big company, for example, the largest egg users in Taiwan, maybe in other countries too, for example, the McDonald's. We need to negotiate, we need to protest against them. And we also need to ensure the consumers or the market that the animal welfare is audited, and with our labels, we develop the standard or lane hand standard, and also develop the scheme, the auditing schemes for the certification systems in Taiwan. And not only that, we need to persuade, to lobby the different sectors of the market. For example, here, the largest hotel system in Taiwan just recently announced their cage-free policies. And for the legislator, because we need to lobby the government to ban the cage system, we need to negotiate with the legislator, not only from the ruling parties, but also from the opposition party or even all parties, so that they can support the legislature to ban the battery cage in Taiwan. And if there is opportunity, we also need to try to put the animal welfare into our constitutions. So the opportunity to revise the constitution is very, very rare. So even there is just very little chance, we still have to try to convince or to negotiate with the politicians. So overall, I think any campaign we should use the holistic point of view to see the opportunities to make the institutional change. We don't have to be pessimism nor the optimism. We just need to see where is the opportunity. So I think from the animal point of view, all the animals hope that we can do what we can do, and we need to really solve all the problems, but maybe not instantly, but incrementally. Maybe not by ourselves, but we can work with the other groups, or from time to time, if we find the partners from the market will do quite a lot of work together with us. So we can do it collectively. Or we can choose, and we also need to see the opportunities. Sometimes we have a plan, but from time to time there is opportunity comes up. So we have to post our plan, and we try to work on try to take the opportunity and try to bring the campaign forward. So I think the question is not to we can't solve all the problem. I think the question is how. We do need to solve all the problem if we really need to make the institutional changes. So we do have to solve it all, but we just need to be careful that it is not by ourselves or immediately. We can do collectively and wisely. That's it. Thank you. That's all I would like to share with you all, and I would like to answer if there's any questions afterwards. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Wong, for your presentation. So if anyone has Q&A, please feel free to add them in the chat and we'll address them at the end of the session. You made some really good points, Wong, about working together. I think there's so much to learn from each other in the movement, even if it's organizations working on slightly different issues or in different countries. Not everything is applicable, but there's definitely a lot of lessons that we can learn from each other. And it's really great to see that hotels in Taiwan have adopted cage-free policies. That's a massive achievement and a really good step forward. So congratulations on all the work you've done on this. Thank you, Wong. Eileen, if you are ready, it will be your turn now. Eileen, sorry.
Ready, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is my little session is on factors influencing incremental change in attitudes to animal welfare in Malaysia, and it is based on my close to 30 years of experience working on environmental and animal rights and animal welfare issues in Malaysia. So next. Please. When I started volunteering with SPCA Selangor in 1996, adoption rates were only around 5 to 10%, and euthanasia rates were close to 90%. There were only 2 registered animal shelters in Kuala Lumpur and Selangor then, which are the most highly populated and industrialized city and state, respectively, in Malaysia. The other states have their own SPCAs, which are run independently as well, and which also had really high euthanasia and pet dumping rates. Next. Today, there are over 50 registered companion animal shelters and countless other unregistered animal rescue groups. Adoption rates for SPCA Selangor's cats are approximately 90%, I think higher than that these days. And for dogs, it hovers between 30 to 50%. Some good months we get 70% adoption rates, and the others, dogs get to live out the rest of their lives peacefully in the shelter. Euthanasia is only used in cases where animals are severely injured or terminally ill and really suffering. Similar increase in adoption rates have been seen in other shelters. So what changed in that 20 years? Activists and concerned citizens became more organized and learned to collaborate to lobby their MPs, city councils, and government agencies, for example, the Department of Veterinary Services. Previously, we tended to see each other as rivals, like, oh, you've got more adoption, more animals adopted than us, you're depriving our dogs and cats of a good home because people are going to your shelter. We stopped seeing each other as rivals, and we started seeing each other as members of the same team. We are all in this together for the sake of the animals. And the press also became more receptive to publishing animal welfare related stories, especially feel-good stories and success stories, because that's what readers wanted. Readers became more receptive to such stories as well. And this is one of the cat parks set up by a city council in which animals, cats can be neutered and put up for adoption. So stray cats are no longer put down by any of the governmental agencies. So stray cats are rounded up, neutered, vaccinated, and put up for adoption in state-run cat parks and cat shelters. Next. So more professionals and people with higher social status, including celebrities, religious authorities, politicians, and even members of the royal families, were seen adopting companion animals. So this increased the status of domestic mixed breed dogs and cats as well. There are higher rates of education and literacy, and with it came higher levels of compassion and empathy and understanding of, say, environmental issues, animal welfare issues, and social justice issues. When people are no longer impoverished and they are no longer concerned with trying to make a living, they are more likely to care about others. And there's also creative adoption campaigns by shelters, for example, in malls. So we bring the animals to the people, animals who otherwise would have been ignored. And this is a campaign. The photo depicts a campaign in one of the local universities. The students did a TNR campaign of the university cats, and they opened up the adoption of campus cats to the public, and they set up a mini shelter so students can come and de-stress and play with the cats and learn to care for cats. Next. Until the early 2000s, there was a lot of resistance to the idea of companion animal neutering. There were very few vets outside of the city. Even in the town in which I grew up, there wasn't a vet until around 1999 or 2000. Government vets were known for low standards of care and negligence, and many animals died of infections, secondary infections when they went in for treatment. So there was a lot of fear and mistrust of government vets. They were seen as providing low standards of care. There's also an assumption that neutering is not permitted by religion, particularly those in the rural Muslim and some Christian communities. There was also a strange but prevalent rumor that neutering made dogs gay or lose their ability to be a watchdog. People will be saying things like, oh, watch out, don't neuter your dog, he's going to turn into a sissy and forget how to be a watchdog and how to guard your house. And there were blasé attitudes towards pet dumping. Once you get tired of a pet, a dog or cat, and they've aged out or they've become sick, people just release them, so they became free-roaming dogs. Right, so people didn't neuter because they could just dump their dogs outdoors. Now, neutering rates are very much higher. Almost all animal shelters and rescuers have a no release until neutering is completed policy. There's a massive increase in the number of vets, including vets, those of the younger generation, who offer reduced rates for TNR and for animal rescuers. And a very big thing that led to an increase in neutering rates is that we remove the obstacles. We bring vets to the people, especially those in low-income communities. They don't own private vehicles. They have no means of transporting their pets to the vet. We brought the vets to them and we offered subsidies and reduced rates. Shelters started offering special rates to rescuers as well. Next. Wait, previous one. Sorry, previous slide. Okay, so we got the government and local MPs involved. We secured their support for TNR campaigns. So many of our local MPs and state assemblymen are very supportive of the efforts because they preferred it to the destruction of stray animals and having to impound them and confine them in some town somewhere. They preferred doing TNR. And we got religious authorities on board as well to make official statements in favor of neutering and to confirm that neutering is not prohibited by religion. And through legislative change, there are now actual penalties for pet dumping, and that's reduced societal acceptance. So if you were to dump your dog, your neighbors and other people will call you out. They'll put up posts on social media condemning you. They'll ask you to bring the dog back in and do the right thing. So because there's reduced acceptance of dumping, more people are willing to neuter and keep their dogs at home rather than have them breed and then dump the puppies or the old dog outside. Okay. And we got the state royal family to support TNR campaigns as well. The lady in the middle is actually the Sultana of Selangor. She was queen at a certain point. We actually have a rotating constitutional monarchy in Malaysia. And we lobbied our MPs, the local and the Housing and Local Government Ministry and Department of Veterinary Services for a differential licensing rate for dog licenses. So this was implemented by several city councils. So if you refuse to neuter your dog, you fail to provide proof of neutering, you have to pay a commercial breeder rate. So to avoid that, people got their dogs neutered and submitted the evidence so they could get the normal homeowner dog license rate. Next. And the most important factor in changing societal attitudes towards animal cruelty is that there was legislative change because nobody wants to be in breach of any existing laws against. They don't want to be caught for an offense under the Animal Welfare Act. So we had to push for legislative change. And the way we did it was we became more organized. We work with academicians, we work with veterinary bodies, and we learn to collaborate and do our research and lobby the Department of Veterinary Services, Ministry of Agriculture, and all related ministries. So this image is from a news site in which our Selangor state government declares that from next year onwards, they will ban the sale of companion animals in pet stores. Pet stores can only sell pet food and pet supplies from now onwards. And that's a very big win. And whatever takes place in Selangor and Kuala Lumpur is usually copied by other states in due time. And in changing societal attitudes towards animal cruelty, it also occurs naturally as part of natural evolution and progression of society. As education and income levels rise, there will be more concern for animals, the environment, and social justice. So part of this change happened naturally. I'm not saying that NGOs did such an amazing job in changing the mindset of an entire nation. A lot of it happened because people became more aware, more literate, and social media played a large part in that as well, in raising awareness. Next. Okay, social media has played a huge role in making animal abuse more visible and also less tolerated. So things that people were quite okay with, quite indifferent to before, like keeping wildlife as pets, having petting zoos and circuses. Now people have called them out on it, and members of the public are becoming more aware and less tolerant, less accepting of abuse. Again, we got the religious authorities, celebrities, academicians, and royal family, that is the key opinion leaders, on board on animal cruelty and abuse issues. And we got organized. Activists and advocates work hard to push for prosecution in cruelty cases. So don't work in silos, work together, call for press conferences, push the attorney general's chambers to go for prosecution. And we got pro bono lawyers on board, and we made it part of legal aid programs. There is an option in which they can take up public interest cases on behalf of animals that have been abused and wildlife. Changing attitudes to plant-based food. Until recently, plant-based food was seen as unappetizing and marketed towards a certain demographic, mostly middle-aged Buddhist and Taoist communities, mostly Mahayana Buddhist communities. There was very little outreach to those outside of Buddhist, Sikh, and Hindu communities. And there was very little appeal to the younger generation, the health conscious and the environmentally conscious, although plant-based food was inexpensive and easily available. So what changed? A higher percentage of members of the younger generation, people from the companion animal rescue movements, environmental movements, and Muslim and Christian communities went vegan. And vegetarians and vegans stopped being silent about their food choices. So it was a matter of values and ethics, and not just, they don't see it as a diet. We don't see it as a diet anymore. We see it as an ethic, a life ethic. And we started being advocates on social media. So this is a photo from our Green Iftar event with the Muslim vegan community. Next. Big food companies, including Nestle and Ayam brand, introduced plant-based options such as nuggets and local favorites but made of plants. So plant-based food became more appealing to a wider cross-section of society. On the left, there's mushroom rendang produced by a local startup. So there are a lot more vegan, halal products as well. So what are some of the factors contributing to incremental and even rapid change in Malaysia? First is collaboration and cooperation. So advocates need to communicate with each other, network, and organize. Stop seeing each other as adversaries and stop working in silos. Rapid change is usually effected by legislative change. So your priority should be to lobby the relevant government agencies and political leaders. You should be putting more effort into government lobbying than into, say, social media awareness programs, although both are essential. So ensure that government agencies want to continue to work with you and give you a seat at the table. So don't antagonize them, don't give them any reason to associate you with anti-government and anti-establishment activities. Continue to work with them and hope that they see you as allies. Use social media to inform and educate the public. Post consistently and in a way that appeals to people who are not already in your movement. I see that with a lot of vegan advocacy groups, we seem to posts that appeal to ourselves, to members of the vegan community, and that seem to alienate those outside of the vegan community. And that needs to change. And remove the whys and replace them with hows. For example, instead of telling people why they should care about a certain cause, create ways to make it easier for them to make the switch. For example, IKEA made their soft serve ice cream plant-based by default. And this is a photo from one of their advertising campaigns. After the last general elections, they were giving out free soy ice cream cones to those of us who showed proof of having voted. We just had to show them the indelible ink on our fingers. So this was a very popular campaign. We bring vets to the community for subsidized paying. For example, campaign Potong Royong by SPCA Selangor and Star Pets. And remove obstacles and lower their resistance to new ideas. This applies to both members of the public and to the government. offer solutions instead of just complaints, and show government ministries the best practices in other countries to show that it can be done. Provide expertise and resources so that they see you as a partner and as a stakeholder, and they continue to give you a seat at the table. Incremental and even rapid change are possible. These are pictures of some of the children at all our World Vegan Day and Veg Fest campaigns, and they provide us with a lot of hope and optimism for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eileen, for your presentation. There was a lot of similarities in some of the things that you said with Wu Hong's presentation, including, the desperate need to collaborate and work together, but also not focusing necessarily on the whys, but also on the how to do, how to bring about all of these changes. It's really great to see so many attitudes shifting with the increase of adoptions, for example, or with the vets being brought to people rather than people having to go to vets. So it was a really interesting sessions, and there's a few questions that have come through, so we'll address those at the end of the session. If you do have any questions, please feel free to add them in the chat. And now we will hear from Richard Moore. If you are ready, Richard, it is your turn. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can see your screen and the presentation.
Okay, great. Great, thank you. Okay, well, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Thank you, firstly, for this opportunity. My name is Richard Moore, and I work at IAR Indonesia Foundation, or Yayasan IA Indonesia. IAR Indonesia is a conservation and welfare organization that focuses primarily on primates in Indonesia, but also a range of other species and conservation topics. In line with today's topic of celebrating incremental changes, I would like to talk to you a little bit about our efforts to mitigate the slow loris trade in Indonesia, and also how we measured the impact. So the slow loris is a small-bodied nocturnal primate found across Southeast Asia and parts of South Asia. And in Indonesia now, there are currently 7 species of slow loris recognized. Along with habitat loss, the illegal trade for pets has been named as a major threat to the survival of the slow lorises. Despite this, the slow loris are protected under Indonesian law, although are a low profile and maybe low priority species for authorities. Indonesia is a known source, transit and destination country for the international wildlife trade, but is also a hub for domestic trade, particularly for pets. Traditionally, the trade in live animals for pets, including slow lorises, has centered around more conventional marketplaces, such as one of the inner city markets, wholesalers and pet shops. Over the last decade or so, a growing body of evidence indicates that the online wildlife trade in Indonesia is also thriving, and in many cases has now overtaken physical market trade. Unfortunately, due to their cute appearance, there is a high demand for slow lorises in online forums, which has been observed. This was fueled again by pet lover communities, which started off online, and then so people were gathering online and then had offline events where they would bring their slow lorises, as you can see in the photo. The majority of the trade over the recent decades has involved the critically endangered Javan slow loris and the endangered greater slow loris. Back in 2008, IAR Indonesia, supported by International Animal Rescue, opened a rescue center in Bogor to house slow lorises rescued from the trade. In 2010, a reintroduction program was established. However, the numbers entering the rescue center was much greater than those which could be safely and appropriately released. And before long, the rescue center was reaching full capacity. So it was obvious that the root of the problem needed to be addressed, which was the illegal wildlife trade. In 2012, IAI Indonesia initiated a holistic strategy to tackle the slow loris trade in Indonesia. We devised a three-pronged approach that included supporting law enforcement, education, and providing sanctuary. This strategy is similar to the Jane Goodall Foundation's triangle approach, which is used to tackle chimpanzee trafficking in Africa. A theory of change was developed and various teams were established to implement each individual component of the strategy. I will discuss more about the approach we took and the different components in the following slides. But essentially, our goal was to reduce the number of slow lorises leaving the habitat and into the wildlife trade. In the first component of the approach, we supported law enforcement efforts. We monitored trade and trade routes, interviewed hunters, traders, and buyers, and collected intelligence data. This was then shared with the law enforcement authorities. We carried out capacity building around the country for law enforcement agencies and forestry staff, and later on as well for the prosecutors and judges. We filed amicus curiae, or friend of the court briefs, to help influence court sentencing. And we also helped the authorities during seizures in handling and identification of slow lorises. In the second component, which was education and awareness, we worked with media and marketing experts and developed a national campaign called Kukanku, translated in English to My Slow Loris. This campaign's online platform included the sharing of educational content, but also provided a place to report trade and essentially was a bridge between the public and the forestry department. So if the public wanted to report wildlife crime or hand over slow lorises, they could connect with the forestry department. The Kukanku online community that had formed was also used to counter people posting pet lorises on Facebook and Instagram. They would, I guess, essentially bully. So people would post photos of their pets, and a lot of people would then ask them to remove the post, which was creating more demand. We also carried out supplementary events in schools, university, and other public events. In addition, we worked with journalists to ensure that all law enforcement efforts were publicized in national media to enhance the deterrent effect. In the third component, our original component, we continued to work with law enforcement agencies, providing housing and care for seized slow lorises. And when feasible, slow lorises were released back to the wild. So in order to measure the impact of our interventions, we monitored physical and online markets and law enforcement efforts carried out by the authorities between 2012 and 2022. And we're actually still monitoring till now, but the period we are looking at here, I'm reporting up to 2022. So I'll talk to you first generally about the trade monitoring results, the dynamics of the trade, and then the relationship and possible influence of our interventions on trade numbers. So starting with trade dynamics, on the left you can see the physical market trade over a 10-year period, and on the right the online trade. Probably if you focus on the line, the green line on the left and the purple line on the right, which is the volume of trade. So from 2012 to 2015, physical market trade steadily decreased, while online trade increased fairly rapidly during that same period. In 2014, online trade surpassed market trade and increased rapidly, peaking in 2017 before dropping sharply to a low in 2022. Here we can see analysis of the law enforcement efforts over the same period. Between 2012 and 2015, the annual number of slow loris-related law enforcement cases was still fairly low. However, in 2016, the number of cases jumped to more than 35. And this number, although decreasing slightly in subsequent years, remained fairly high until 2022. Also worth noting, there was a landmark sentence in 2017, which was handed out for slow loris trade, where 2 traders received 36-month prison sentences, which was just shy of the maximum 42 months, which prior to this had been unheard of for slow loris trade. When we look at the trade trends in relation to law enforcement efforts, so again, the overall total is the blue line, and then the court cases is the bars. We found that there was a negative correlation between the number of court cases and the volume of slow low-risk trade in physical markets. So as court cases increased, trade decreased. And while from this graph, we can see that the trade numbers decreased following a spike in court cases, we were unable to find a statistical correlation. If we look at a breakdown of the types of traders active, we can see that the majority of online traders were classified as keeper traders, which represented more than 80% of all of the traders, followed by generalist traders and then distributors, which were only 3%. Keeper traders typically were only in possession of small number of slow lorises and would often be selling their own pets after a period of time. Due to their abundance, they represented the category with the largest number of animals collectively. Distributors on the right, by comparison, comprised a much smaller group, but were in possession of a large number of animals. The distributors were probably supplying to the other types of traders. Following a number of law enforcement actions targeting distributors between 2016 and 2018, we observed a 90% decline in the number of distributor profiles and the volume of slow lorises traded by them. When distributors were targeted by law enforcement, we can see the impact this had on the keeper trader group, which also decreased from 2018 onwards. Just to provide some context, here we compare slow loris trade with other Indonesian primates groups commonly found in trade, so langurs and small apes. This is just from between 2015 and 2022, but from the purple bars, you can see there's a general decrease from 2017 in slow loris trade. Probably clearer in the next slide, where here we ran a regression on the same data and found that from 2015, slow lorises had a significant reduction in trade, which we did not find in the others. While we had a holistic project running for the slow lorises, there wasn't similar projects running for programs running for the other species groups. In terms of media attention, over the period of 10 years, we can see that there was a steady increase in the slow lorises featured in the news. And from between 2016 and 2019, law enforcement news featured heavily. We measured public perception on Instagram and found that there was a decrease in negative content, i.e. those promoting or glorifying trade, and while at the same time a positive increase in an increase in positive content at the same time. In terms of sanctuary, here we can see data over a 10-year period as well for the numbers of slow lorises we received at the rescue center annually, and over the 10 years, more than 1,300 slow lorises were received, most of which, or many of which, derived from confiscations. In 2013, there was a spike where 3 big seizures of slow lorises coming from Sumatra into Java occurred in a short period of time, and in one seizure alone, there was 236 slow lorises seized. IAR Indonesia, even during the height of the trade, continued to expand its facilities to be able to receive all animals from trade. And by providing an outlet for seized animals, the law enforcement agencies could continue to act and continue to arrest and seize more. So in summary, online trade overtook market trade in 2013, and now market trade is extremely rare. We haven't seen any, maybe one individual a year over the last 4 or 5 years, and online slow loris trade peaked in 2017 before dropping in 2018. I just have to say here that there has been a slight increase in this last year, probably due to the lack of recent law enforcement, but we've now created a task force to deal with this again. And in terms of law enforcement, we found that market trade negatively correlated with law enforcement. And despite increased law enforcement, we didn't see a significant correlation with the online trade. However, it's likely there was other contributing factors, perhaps the maximum sentence that was handed out and the increased media exposure, creating a stronger deterrent. In 2018, the disruption of the organized trade was observed, so the reduction in distributors and other indications of this as well were seen from our medical staff, where prior to 2018, they would receive a lot of slow lorises with cut teeth. The organized traders that were shipping large numbers of slow lorises would routinely cut the teeth of slow lorises to prevent them biting each other in trade. So following 2018, luckily, and yeah, thankfully, we've seen a reduction in this. We saw raised public awareness, and especially among government agencies who, prior to our campaigning and capacity building, were unable often to identify slow lorises, let alone the species. And we also saw changes in public perception on Instagram and also increased media attention. For the in terms of sanctuary, we saw an initial influx, but this is now stabilized, and the rescue center, having a rescue center enables law enforcement to continue. So in conclusion, here we have tried to demonstrate that despite the slow loris trade being a highly complex issue, by taking a holistic approach through a triangle approach, positive impacts can be achieved. This does require long-term commitment. It took us 7 years before we started to see a reduction in the trade, and requires building relationships with the government, other NGOs, and the private sector. It also highlights the role of the rescue centers in trade reduction and how we used it as a tool as part of a larger strategy, a larger conservation strategy. However, as mentioned earlier, continued vigilance is required. We have seen a slight increase in the last year or so. The slow loris trade, perhaps unlike the bird trade in Indonesia, which is steeped in tradition and culture, Indonesian culture, we believe that because it was a newer trend, we were able to reverse it fairly quickly. This might not be the case for other more established traditions, but yeah, hopefully it just might take a bit longer. And finally, we're never going to stop the trade completely. Our campaigning and law enforcement work probably isn't going to reach rural areas or more remote villages. But we believe that if we can take out the organized nature of the trade and significantly reduce numbers in trade, then to a more sustainable level, this is still classed as a success. And with that, yeah, thank you very much. And feel free to ask any questions or, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. What a great presentation. There were quite a few very excited comments about seeing all the data and having all the information visually so clear. It is great to be able to compare online and market trade with also social media attitudes, court cases, and how all of this is affecting other species as well, which is always a concern. So yeah, this session was really, your presentation was really interesting, and there's quite a few questions that have come through the chat as well. So if I could invite Eileen, Wong to turn their cameras on and unmute yourselves. Perfect. And we'll now start the Q&A session. If anyone in the room has more questions, please feel free to add them in the chat and we'll try and answer all of them. So the first question I'll ask is more directed to Eileen, but it actually ties in with topic that is relevant to all of you. So we've had a question, Eileen, asking about collaboration for stakeholder engagement. Did your organization reach out to other animal organizations and then together call for actions from authorities, companies, or celebrities? And do you have any specific steps or recommendations for organizations that are preparing to implement changes?
Yes, we reached out to them formally in writing, and we said that we are going to set up an ad hoc coalition to work on a particular issue, for example, the culling of stray dogs. And we made it very clear that no one organization was going to be seen as the lead, because if we did have one, they would say, oh, you're going to take all the credit. You're just asking us to do the scut work for you, and then you'll take all the credit. So we'll say that we'll all be equal partners in this coalition. The ultimate goal is to achieve all these things, and we'll all take equal credit. And with people in organizations, most people are a few degrees of separation away from someone in government, or a celebrity, or a well-known rights lawyer. So it was a great way of reaching out to others that we might not otherwise have um, be able to meet in person. So through the coalition, we get to meet the others. So we do have to reach out to them and make it very clear, the division of duties very clear, the sharing of credit very clear as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think if any party wants to be involved in any change, they will want to be credited. So we have to speak their language as well, and make sure to find ways for everyone to benefit in those situations. Richard and Woo-hong and Eileen, if you have more to add as well, can you tell us a bit more how you manage to develop and maintain good relationships with authorities? Because Eileen, for example, you mentioned being in touch with the royal family, but there's also, especially Woo-hong or Richard actually as well, a lot of good relationships that you have to maintain at government levels with MPs or authorities. So how do you maintain those good relationships or form them in the first place?
Perhaps I'll go first. I think in Asia, it's very important to help government authorities save face. We can't make them look stupid in front of the public. We have to help them look good and make them feel like, oh, it's their idea as well. Like it's their initiative as well. So sometimes we have to let our egos take a step back and pretend it wasn't our idea. And we make their work easier by doing the research, getting the numbers. Like if we want to recommend alternatives to the culling of crows, we have to give them alternatives, what's being done in, say, Singapore, and this is how it's done. So we do the research for them to make it easier for them.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. You know, in the animal protection movement, there shouldn't be any ego involved. It should be all about the animal. So it's really essential on our parts to manage that, and sometimes just let go of all the ego to actually make sure that there are positive changes happening for animals. Woo-hong, do you have anything to add in terms of how to build in the first place good relationships with different stakeholders and how to maintain those good relationships?
I totally agree with Eileen, and yeah, we just have to careful about the relationship with other groups or with the government or even academics. I think we just need to do many things, but then we have to share everything with the other groups, because every group has their own agenda. But if we want to have them on our agenda, sometimes we just need to do the jobs mostly, but share the credit with others. So then we can reach to the final goal. I think that is very important attitudes toward other partners, other stakeholders.
I agree. Richard, do you have anything to add on that specific question?
Thank you. Yeah, from our perspective, I guess, yeah, it's very important. I agree with the previous two speakers too. From our perspective, yeah, it's very important to build these relationships. The change has to come with the government. The change has to come from within. It takes a long time. It's can be very frustrating. But yeah, over time we have seen improvements. I think probably initiating collaborations initially was through, us approaching them for offering capacity building, training sessions, and then from then it's kind of, over time we build good relationships with our team, our investigation teams. Once we've worked together, and they then trust us to supply them with accurate information, then yeah, it helps a lot. But it's a fragile relationship, and it takes a long time, and it can be frustrating.
Yeah, thank you. Wong, I have a question for you. What was the main argument that helped hotels in Taiwan shift or agree to shift to cage-free eggs?
It's a different approach to the two hotel chain. The Marriott is the international hotel chain, and the Marriott International, they have a policy to shift to the cage-free eggs on 2025. So, but we try to contact them, to approach them, because we are now trying to hold the AfA 2025 in Taipei. Everyone is welcome here in Taipei next year. So we try to approach different hotel and say, if you want to cooperate with the AfA 2025, I would like you to have a better policy than just cage free. So their attitude is fine, not only just because they want to win the bid. They not only go to cage free, but also including the welfare certified milk in Taiwan. So they change the whole policy. So that is a different approach. And the region hotel chain is the largest hotel chain in Taiwan. And their approach is because they want to become the first hotel chain in Taiwan that go cage free. So two hotel system, but we use two different approaches.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning the AfA conference. We will be hosting our AfA conference in Taiwan next year, and you, Hong, and East is co-hosting the conference with a couple of other organizations. So we hope we'll see you all there. But it is great to know that, events like these or activities can prompt organizations or governments or facilities to make changes for better welfare for animals, and sometimes a little bit of competition goes a long way. As you said, one of the hotels wanted to be the first one, and there's also oftentimes pressure, whether it's within a country or internationally. So when there are changes happening somewhere, then other countries or other facilities want to follow suit as well. So that's very interesting. Thank you. Richard, there is a question for you, more specific to your presentation and the slow loris trade. Do you have data on whether there has been an increase in other species being kept as pets or featured online now there has been a focus direct towards lorises? Or has there been a broad positive and effective awareness affecting other species as well?
Thank you. It's a good question, actually. And this was something that we had been anticipating, whether the slow loris community would then, target other species. Our monitoring team, they are observing a range of other species in trade as well, langurs and small apes, which I presented data on as well. And we didn't see any noticeable increases in people shifting from slow lorises to other species. I think potentially the trend in slow loris keeping was fairly specific. It was quite, they didn't tend to be involved with the keeping other animals, birds. The communities were quite inclusive, and so they would gather. They would be breeding their own slow lorises, or trying to and sharing information. But yeah, we didn't see. We're monitoring that and expecting it. But yeah, luckily, with the other species, we just see a gradual, slight increase over time in online forums on just as pet keeping becomes more and more popular here, unfortunately.
Right. And what would you say are the key messages or top interventions and lessons that could be used by people working with other species heavily affected by the trade? Where would you recommend directing and focusing what are usually very limited resources?
Yeah, this is tricky. We have since tried to apply the same model to gibbons and siamangs, but you know, the problem with gibbons and siamangs is that the rehabilitation is much more difficult and require more space and more you know, specialist facilities. I guess, and we have to work with other NGOs. You know, if there's an increase in gibbons being seized, most rescue centers for gibbons are currently you know, nearing capacity as well. And so we're communicating with them, you know, if there's going to be an increase in law enforcement or an increase, you know, through the campaigning, if more people are surrendering pet gibbons to the authorities, are you able to bring these in? So we're having to work with many more stakeholders at the moment, other NGOs and the government in preparation for a possible influx. But yeah, I guess generally though, probably the most, you know, the strongest impact was the law enforcement and the higher sentences, we believe. So supplying information, if you're able to collect information on wildlife trade, and then supply this to the authorities, and then yeah, exposing this nationally as well, making more people aware that this isn't tolerated and perpetrators will be punished. But yeah, we do believe as well though that if you take out any one of the components, it probably wouldn't have had the same impact. So it's difficult on you know, scarce resources, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Wong, you have your hand up.
Yes, I actually have the question to Richard, because it's very interesting to learn from you about the slow lorries trade in Indonesia. Do you happen to know that there's any export of the slow lorries to Taiwan or not? Because groups in Taiwan is very concerned about the wildlife pet issues. We try to stop any import of the import pet from the wildlife pet in Taiwan to try to build up the so-called white list. Only those species specified by the government you can have as a pet. Otherwise, you should not have any wildlife as a pet in Taiwan.
Yeah, there is international trade. We believe the main threat to Indonesian slow lorises is still the domestic trade. We did in 2019 had a seizure of 79 slow lorises in West Java that was going to be shipped up to China, I believe. I think probably the slow lorises that you see in Thailand may be native. There's the Bengal slow loris, certainly from the neighboring countries. Bengal slow lorises, pygmy slow lorises, and the Malaysian greater slow loris. So if you have any information on Indonesian slow lorises in Thailand, we'd certainly be interested to you know, discuss this. But yeah, I would believe that most of them are coming from that region, not shipped from Indonesia.
Thank you. I have a question for all of you. What sort of maintenance work has been required to keep the good results going? Or do you have any successes that you feel are permanent and self-sustaining? I don't know if Eileen, you would like to start, if you have something to say on that question. You're on mute, I can't hear you.
I think maintenance simply means never letting your guard down. It's the same with environmental advocacy as well. Once you let your guard down, people start degazetting bits of forest reserve. So we know all about that. You have to keep watching out for and making sure that one form of cruelty is not replaced by another, right? And we have to keep on campaigning and then get members of the public to be your eyes and ears as well and respond to them. The members of your public, members of the public are your allies. Help them be, get them to help you by becoming informants in cases of cruelty or abuses or breaches of the law.
Yeah, I completely agree. As part of our SMAC coalition, we often say that, you know, we all have a role to play in animal cruelty issues online, but that obviously applies to everything. So members of the public have a really big role to play, as well as organizations and governments and facilities and authorities and us. So yeah, that's a really good point. Wong, do you have anything to add?
I think the idea of one health or one welfare is very helpful, and perhaps it's just one planet, because every animals matter, and sometimes environment issues also matter to us too. Although the environment issue may be just talking about environment, but we are living in the same environment. So I think as a group in Taiwan, we do take care about every other issues too. And maybe we don't have to do all, but we usually support all. For example, we support the government freedom of government information. We support the democratic participation of the public policies. So we could not just only confine ourselves as only animal protection, and we don't care about other issues for human rights or yeah. So we need to open our eyes and minds. Then other groups, other issues, other social movement will also open their mind, their eyes to us.
Yeah, it is very much all connected. You know, any animal issues or environmental issues are linked to human rights issues as well and human health. So there needs to be a comprehensive approach that involves all of these different topics. Richard, do you have any tips on or any anything to add, sorry, on that question?
Yeah, thank you. So I do apologize. I think I may have misheard before the issue of sclerosis in Thailand or Taiwan. From Wong. I may have answered the wrong question there. So yeah,
Taiwan, not Thailand. Yeah,
Taiwan. Yeah, I do. Yeah,
No
this is
problem.
not within their range. So it could well be from Indonesia. If you have any information, please do
Sure.
send it our way, and we'll look into it. Thank you, and
Sure.
apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's just not letting your guard down. As we can see, you know, in 2022 there was a reduction in law enforcement because the trade had reduced. So no need for law enforcement, or not as much need. And then after a couple of years of you start to see the traders become braver again, starting to put them back on online platforms. So it's just a constant battle, and working with other organizations will help to alleviate the effort needed if more eyes watching for it. But also the One Health project is that was Wong mentioned, is something that we are looking into as well, as more of a at a global level, national level, certainly in Indonesia. If people aren't so concerned about conservation issues, maybe they are concerned about public health, and this might be a way of getting the message through. So yeah, but it's just continued efforts, I guess.
We've talked a lot about collaboration today. In all of your presentations, you've mentioned collaboration, working together, and it is really good to hear these things, because as AFA, that's exactly what we aim to do, to just be that space where organizations can come together, collaborate, support each other, share information. So for example, this is a great example with Richard and Wong today, where you both work in different countries on very different issues, and yet you have information for each other that might help you in the work that you do. And it's really great to have a space where this is possible. I have a question for all of you. What would you say would be challenges that you had not anticipated in the work or the campaigns that you have been working on? Sometimes there's just things we don't anticipate, challenges that come up that make the work that we do a bit slower, or the changes to come about a bit slower. So I just wondered if there was anything that you had not anticipated and that might be helpful advice for other organizations, for example.
Well, for me in Taiwan, I think one thing that we didn't expect is the political competitions. The different competition in every elections. Once we have the election, and then the political structure in the Congress or in the legislature is changed, then we have to again face the different situations in the Congress, and that was something we didn't really expect. For example, we have the ruling party remain the same, but the majority in the Congress is changed. So there is because of that change, then the competition between different parties make our lobby more difficult. But we still have to find opportunity from there and try to overcome that kind of difficulties here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Even if organizations take into account the political context into their strategies, it might change overnight. It's the kind of things that is quite unstable and difficult to predict sometimes. Eileen, do you have any insights into unpredictable challenges?
I'd say legal restrictions when you're trying to register a new NGO in a country, or when you're trying to register a local chapter or local branch of an international NGO. There are often a lot of restrictions, and you have to walk on eggshells for pretty much the entire year until you get more established. So that's something that really restricts your work, and it can be very frustrating. So be prepared for that.
Yeah, sometimes procedures and paperwork can clog a lot of things. Richard, what about you?
I can't think of anything too specific, but maybe just the changing, the modus operandi, with the rise of the internet. When we started this, Solaris trade was offline. It then, became more prevalent online, and then shot up, much higher than it ever was on market trade in the physical markets. And they are using kind of becoming more innovative, using bank transfers. They're using a third-party account, so that the police are finding it difficult to track the money. So the money from the buyer is sent to a third-party account, and then when the third-party account receives the money, the animal is then sent via courier, so they don't even have to meet anymore. So it's kind of dealing with these changes and ways of keeping, one step ahead and tracking them. They're smuggling birds inside speakers, inside the presentation yesterday, inside bottles, inside watermelons. So we're trying all different things, and it's just, constantly trying to keep up with the new methods and the trade routes and things. But yeah, that's probably to be anticipated.
Yeah, for sure. It's impossible things to predict. So we always have to kind of be reactive in those situations rather than be actually able to prehend them or prevent them. We see that online as well, where, perpetrators of animal cruelty always find new ways of hiding or distributing content. And it's, as Eileen said, we need to keep our guards up because things are changing every day. And obviously with the examples that you mentioned, Richard, with how animals are being hidden and transported, it's very difficult to imagine all the ways that people can come up with to just trade animals. I will finish with one question for Eileen that is quite specific. So could you tell us more about the stray cat parks and where they are located in the Philippines, if you have information?
They are actually in Malaysia, in Cyberjaya and Klang, both in Selangor. So not in the Philippines, but in Malaysia.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, do you have anything else to add before we just wrap up the session? There's a few slides to wrap up the session, but if you would like to add anything, please feel free to do so now. No?
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
Perfect. Amanda, would you be able to share? Right, thank you. Okay, perfect. So we have a feedback form. If you could take a minute to fill it in, it really doesn't take much more time than that. But it's really good for us to have feedback about our events, just to know whether the themes have been appropriate, if the format of those events are working for you. It's just for us to be able to improve our events. So we are sharing the link in the chat as well, and there's the QR codes here that you can scan. We also have 2 future Connect sessions. So we held our very first Connect session in March this year. This is our second Connect. We have one in August on the power of community, sharing skills, experiences, and resources. So you can join as a participant if you're interested in speaking. Just get in touch with one of our team members. And we also have a Connect in November on communication and a united movement. And once again, if you would like to talk to this event or if you would like to participate, you can head over to our website, which is also shared in the comment section, or asiaforanimals.com/connect. And we also have in-person events coming up this year. So we have Asia Farm Animal Day in Hanoi, Vietnam, between the 9th and the 11th of October. This is the second time we are going to have AFAD in person. Last year, if you were there, it was an amazing event. We had really good feedback, and we're very excited to have this event a second time in Hanoi in October. And our Farm Animal Coalition is also organizing regional events. So the next one is in the Philippines on the 28th of June, and we are planning one in India, but we don't have a date yet. And as Wong said, in 2025, we will have our AfA conference in Taiwan with East and 2 other organizations as well that are co-hosting it. So you can go on our website, asiaforanimals.com/events, to have access to the events list and learn more on how you can join and register for the events.